The Sports Renegades podcast on SportsTownChicago.com. Welcome back to the Sports Renegades here on SportsTownChicago.com. I'm Ryan Stuprich.
And I'm Ryan Risky, and as we said last segment, we're going to be talking about the Bulls, in particular, their front office, and how Bulls fans are very unsatisfied with Gar Forman. And now there's a petition on Petition Buzz called Fire Gar Forman, and a Bulls fan, Sammy Hassan, wrote a very interesting kind of little excerpt about it. He said, "It's time for a change, Chicago. It's time to stand up and let our voices be heard. Gar Forman has had one too many last chances, and the last straw has been drawn. He has run this franchise straight into the ground with his hands behind his back, giving no effort or accountability for the downward spiral the franchise is going in. Year after year, Gar Forman has stood pat at the trade deadline, staying content with the roster he's put together, a roster that has yet to go far in the playoffs. Between 2010 and 2014, Gar Forman has made 0 trade acquisitions as the general manager. The lack of help for Derrick Rose eventually took a toll on his body and turned him into the injury-riddled player he is today. Gar Forman has rarely made any moves in free agency during the offseason. In fact, the only addition last summer to the team was rookie Bobby Portis. A team that wasn't even close to competing for the finals last season was not improved in the slightest way. In fact, he fired a top-caliber coach in Tom Thibodeau. It wasn't the Bulls front office's first time having issues with another coach.
No, of course not.
Vinny Del Negro is another example. If the Bulls aren't making offseason additions via free agency or trading to get better during the regular season, it seems Gar Forman remains intent with drafting late first-round picks and second-round picks and then selling those players to the fan base as the difference-making role players the Bulls need. Actually, the only thing the fan base needs is the termination of the Bulls front office, especially their general manager. Sign the petition below to at least help voice your concern about the franchise and let the Chicago Bulls know that their fans aren't happy with the way they're running the team into the ground. We pay top dollar to watch our team play, so we expect our money's worth."
Yeah.
It has almost 10,000 signatures, and the goal is 100,000.
I think they'll get 100,000. It's unbelievable, and the way Gar Forman talked on the radio today, it was like he was saying they were as good as Golden State. He basically said, without actually saying it, he said that they can still compete and they can still they still have a chance to beat Cleveland. No, you don't. Look at who Cleveland just got on the trade deadline. Even they made a move on the trade deadline. Channing Frye they got from Cleveland. They got him. He's on Cleveland. They got him from Orlando. It doesn't make any sense. The Bulls couldn't make a move like that. I mean, they think that an old and hurt Pau Gasol, an injured Nikola Mirotic, who's lost 18 pounds, by the way. He's lost 18 pounds.
As I said, I think he's just done for the season. I don't think he'll be able to get back
right.
Strong
I mean,
enough.
Even if he was ready to come back in like a week or two, he can't. He lost all his muscle. He has to work
and
that
he looked
back.
weak to begin with out there. He was getting pushed around.
Yeah, and he takes bad shots, and he misses easy shots, and he fouls people. But that's a different story. And Jimmy Butler's, in the midst of himself being out for like a month and a half, and so it's unbelievable. Your best player's hurt, and Nikola Mirotic is hurt. Pau Gasol is old. Joakim Noah's out for the season, so you lose any backup size that you have down there. It's all Taj now.
And then Gar Forman went and said that he views Joakim Noah and Pau Gasol as key pieces to winning now and in the future.
That's when I was so mad. I can't believe he said that he pretty much intended on re-signing Joakim Noah and re-signing Pau Gasol. If that's the case, he needs to pack his bags and leave. And if John Paxson thinks the same, which he must think the same, then they both need to be gone soon. I mean, they've been in charge for like 14 years, 13 years, something like that. And what have the Bulls done? Nothing.
In 2009. Paxson was hired, I think, a couple of years before that.
Yeah, they've been doing this for such a long time. I know John Paxson's been working in the organization for 13 or 14 years. That's what I meant by that. He didn't get his position until like 06 or 07 or something. But yeah, it's just unbelievable. I don't understand.
And I read a report that said they're prepared to offer Gasol $20 million to stay.
$20 million for how long? I mean, 2 more years. He's like 35 right now, 35, 36, something like that. And you're going to have him now until he's like 38 or 39. He might think about retirement after this year anyway. It's possible. He's already got his 2 rings.
Right, except if he's having a strong year that he'll be able to cash in on. It's hard to pass up on that.
Yeah, well, I know teams are going to be after him too. And, I mean, Gar Forman thinks that Powell's going to want to come back here. I guess if you throw enough money at him,
I read somewhere that said, I forgot where I read it. It said that one of the reasons Pau Gasol came to the Bulls was to play under Tom Thibodeau.
Yes, yeah, because he wants to play under a good coach, and a coach that will use him the way that Pau wants to be used, which they did.
Yeah, I mean, he led the league in double-doubles last year. And
right.
And another thing is, obviously they fired one of the top coaches in Tom Thibodeau. They hired Fred Hoiberg, and as poor of a coach as you and I think he is, we have to give him the benefit of the doubt because he has not been given a chance to succeed. The Bulls front office has not given him players that fit his system. They brought him in to fix the offense, while the offense ranks 18th in the NBA right now.
Their defense has been better than their offense at certain points of the season, which is something I thought I would never say.
And the front office didn't acquire any players that fit Hoiberg's system. In fact, they didn't acquire anyone in the offseason. They re-signed Mike Dunleavy to a ridiculous contract. They re-signed Aaron Brooks.
And then he was hurt for half the season.
And then they drafted Bobby Portis, and that was it. That was all they did in the offseason.
Right.
They were not close to winning a championship, and that's all they did, thinking that they were really close when they were really far away. And now with the team adjusting to a coach that does not fit any of their capabilities, it's been even more evident that the Bulls front office really need a change because, as you said, you heard that they had already been, and we were prepared to hire Hoiberg a couple of years ago. They already knew they were going to fire Thibodeau after this last season a couple of years ago.
Right.
And then they were already prepared to hire Hoiberg. Like, as the general manager and the vice president of basketball operations, you need to know that he's the guy. And the fact that they didn't interview a single candidate. They didn't interview a single candidate to be the head coach. They just gave the job to Hoiberg.
Yeah, because he was in with them and buddy with them, and he was a former player and all
loyalty and yada yada yada. It's so bad.
Here's the thing about that too. They already knew they were going to fire Tom Thibodeau before they lost to the Cavs in the second round. What if the Bulls beat the Cavs in the second round, moved on to the Eastern Conference Finals, and went on to the finals?
I think
would they still have fired Tom Thibodeau?
I honestly think they would have beaten the Hawks if they had gotten by Cleveland.
I'm sure they would have. I mean, Atlanta's Atlanta, and Rose was on fire in the playoffs, surprisingly enough. And Jimmy Butler was starting to turn into a really good number 2 player, and Pau Gasol was on fire last year too. So yeah, I think it was just interesting the way I wonder if they would have kept Tom Thibodeau if they would have made it to the NBA Finals.
I'm pretty sure if they had won the title, they would have still fired him just because they don't like him.
It sounds like they would have. I agree with you. I think they probably would have. It's unbelievable. And then a couple years ago, they draft Marcus Teague
over
Draymond Green. I mean, oh my God! Look at the core you'd have: Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green. It's unbelievable.
And, I mean, Draymond Green is like an ideal player to play with Tom Thibodeau, too.
That's like having – I mean, it's a bad comparison, but Jimmy Butler is like Klay Thompson. Not as good, but like a Klay Thompson. And then Draymond Green. And, I mean, Draymond Green's the 3rd best player on Golden State, so I don't understand. Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson are sort of the core of Golden State. And they got some other good role players like Iguodala and stuff. But those are like the core players. The Bulls had a chance to take one of those. Instead, they take Marcus Teague to help. They drafted him as a backup to Derrick Rose, and that doesn't make any sense.
And he was like the 3rd stringer to Heinrich and Nate Robinson.
And I believe that this was the 2012 draft, right? I believe this was the 2012 draft. So at this point,
the year they drafted him was the year Rose missed the entire season.
Right. So you draft Marcus Teague and Rose is injured for the entire year. I mean, did you think Marcus Teague would be a good replacement for Derrick Rose while he was rehabbing? No. I mean, how could anybody think that?
Not when you have
just
Kirk
because
Heinrich.
His brother Jeff Teague had a couple good years in Atlanta. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, oh yeah, he's a Teague, he'll be good. No, not the case.
Yeah, definitely not the case. And before we do a quick update, one last thing regarding the Bulls front office is something that probably a lot of reporters and radio stations are going to probably do, talk shows, look for new candidates to potentially replace Gar Forman and John Paxson, except the sad thing is they're probably not going anywhere. I doubt they're even on the hot seat. I doubt Jerry Reinsdorf cares.
No, Jerry Reinsdorf doesn't care, and apparently he's passed off most of the Bulls operations to his son, Michael Reinsdorf. Michael Reinsdorf is pretty much running the Bulls now, and Jerry Reinsdorf is just focusing on the White Sox because that's his favorite team. He didn't care about anything that the Bulls have done, really. He just cares about the White Sox. So,
yeah,
whatever.
It's really tough to just think about because this team is starting to get into the unlikable territory that the 2014 Bears were in.
Well, and that's why nationally a lot of people hate the Bulls. I mean, my brother hates the Bulls. He doesn't like anything that they do. He thinks their fans are annoying as hell. And, I mean, since we're Bulls fans, we don't necessarily see that, but we see what the Bulls are doing and all the wrong decisions they've made. And I think now, especially with this trade deadline, them not making a move when they're in 7th place in the Eastern Conference, I think it really shows that it's the final straw. As you were reading what that guy wrote, it's the final straw. I mean, we've had enough. It's time to move on.
The only people
I don't mind if they rebuild for a couple years. I went through it with the Cubs. We're going through it with the Bears. It's not a big deal if the Bulls go through it too.
And it's become evident that this recent rebuild, when they drafted Rose, it didn't work out. It's time to start again.
Right.
It didn't work out. That's kind of how it goes sometimes.
Right. And just to recap what the one move that the Bulls did make today, it was a 3-team deal between the Hawks, Jazz, and Bulls.
They got that second-round pick that they love.
Right. The
that
Jazz,
they usually pass on.
Yes, they do usually. The Jazz got Shelvin Mack from Atlanta. The Bulls received third-year guard Justin Holiday from...
Career shooting percentage of .368.
368? Got to be a little higher than that. From Atlanta, and a second-round draft pick from Utah. And the Hawks landed veteran point guard Kirk Heinrich from Chicago. This is his second stint with the Hawks. I feel kind of bad for Kirk. He's been... especially the last 3 or 4 years, he's been shipped out of every place he's been.
Yeah, the Bulls trade deadline was the Bulls front office saying, we think this team's going to win a championship. We're just going to ship off a guy that doesn't really play in a salary dump so that we don't have to pay as much money.
I don't understand why
tax.
They did this, because if Rose gets hurt again, they're really going to be struggling at the shoot. I guess Justin Holiday is better than Kirk Heinrich. I have no clue. I've never really paid attention to
Justin
Holiday.
He can't be that good if his shooting percentage in his career is .360.
No.
I
mean, this isn't Drew Holiday.
Yeah.
This is Justin Holiday.
You're not getting anyone good for Kirk Heinrich. Bottom line.
Right. So that's just sort of what happened with the Bulls. Heinrich gone. Justin Holiday is now a Chicago Bull, and they also get the second-round draft pick from Utah.
And that's after it was sounded like they were going to get Rudy Gay and Ben McLemore, or even potentially DeMarcus Cousins, and it turns out there was no trade talks about that.
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked to see something. I mean, something needs to change, and they didn't change anything. So, I don't know. We're going to take an update and then a break. After that, we'll come back and we'll wrap up the Bulls discussions and all that fun stuff. Sports Renegades, SportsTownChicago.com. The Sports Renegades podcast on SportsTownChicago.com.